Hello, welcome back to another Music Masterpieces. I'm very excited to talk about this next song, and I'm going to go back to the 1980s, and I'm just going to explain how I came to Luther Vandross. So, Luther was already well established as an artist before I even knew he existed. So, I started listening to music properly 1978, 79, really sort of picking up on it. And it wasn't until I went to work at a local place I used to work, and a guy there said to me, he said, "Oh, you're into music, aren't you?" I went, "Yeah, yeah." And he said, "Have you listened to If Only for One Night by Luther Vandross?" And I went, "Nope, never heard that song, never heard of Luther, didn't know who he was." And we didn't have like the internet to go and research who Luther Vandross was then. Anyway, he said to me, "Look, I'm going to bring you the album in tomorrow. Go and have a listen to it." I went, "Okay, no problem, give anything a go." And took home the album, put the album on, and I thought, "Oh, I like that track, Got to the point with If Only for One Night by Luther Vandross, and I was absolutely blown away by his vocal, his voice, the song, absolutely everything. And so I subsequently became a big Luther Vandross fan. And in the mid-'80s, I went to see quite a few soul singers, soul groups. So I'm very lucky I got to see George Benson. George Benson had been sort of going through his jazz pop era where he wrote popular songs, but he did his thing on it. And Luther, his Give Me the Reason album, I think, was the one that reached a lot of people in the UK at that point. And he did a number of different shows. So he did like a Wembley Arena show, but I got to see him before then. I got to see him at Hammersmith in a much more sort of intimate gig. Because, in London, you had Wembley Arena, which when groups got to a certain point, Wembley Arena was almost like their big show before they might have gone off and done stadium stuff. People weren't playing Wembley Stadium at that point, apart from Live Aid was Wembley Stadium, and perhaps I think Queen did a gig there, but Wembley Stadium wasn't really done like Take That did in the 2000s. So Hammersmith Odeon was the place where you would always go and see many groups. It was like the place to go. It's now called Hammersmith Apollo. And when I go back, I went there to see Adele in 2012, and it was weird going back there to see her at that stage, because it was like, well, I've been to see so many groups here and so many different sounds and so many different people. But Luther, I remember coming on stage, and like you take somebody for granted and you take a voice for granted. So maybe in years to come, we'll take Adele's voice for granted and we'll go, wow, she was amazing in her time. Going back to the 50s and 60s, you'd think about Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra's voice still stands up today. I grew up with voices like Matt Monro, and Matt Monro's voice is just incredible as well. He's got that certain something. We talked about this in the last video with Steve Perry and Journey. He's got that certain something. Well, it could be argued that Luther's voice and his range and his ability to control what he does, he's probably in the top 5 singers that I've ever heard, I would say. You might have a difference of opinion. If you do, that's great. Tell me if you've got somebody else that you would put into that bracket, but would you put Luther there as well? Well, it was a weird one for me, because I heard The Impossible Dream by Matt Monro because my dad played it. So we had Matt Monro's greatest hits on LP, and we had Dean Martin greatest hits on LP. But my mum and dad loved Matt. and they got to see Matt Monro locally. So that was great for them. So that was really special for them. And I sit there and I think, well, what's special for me? What's special for me in that era? Well, Luther most definitely is. But he didn't record this till in the 90s. And I challenge anybody to better this version of The Impossible Dream. Okay? And I would put my top 3 versions, bearing in mind Tom Jones, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, massive artists have all done this song. But this interpretation is incomparable. So let's start and have a listen. There's this beautiful cinematic feel to this. This beautiful harp in the background. Rolling drums. And then there's Luther.
To dream the impossible dream.
Wow.
To find the unbeatable force.
Just those little Lutherisms.
To bear with unbearable sorrow. And to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, and to love pure and chaste from afar.
See, the thing that he does here and the arrangement that they created with this track is it's a lot, I think it's slower than anything, any of the other versions of the song. But sometimes what you get with great singers is that what they do with tracks is that they kind of do a skit singing thing with it, where they'll do like their own interpretation of it. But I think this is still Luther's own interpretation of it, but I think that he worked it out. I'm not saying the others didn't, by the way, but I think he worked it out, and he said, I'm going to put my interpretation of this, but I'm going to sound as if I wrote it. And I think the thing with singers from certainly the 60s and the 70s, and maybe this was a symptom of recording in those times and being in a studio, and they had so many opportunities to record. Maybe in the 90s this changed. What Luther was able to do here was create an arrangement, and I think the arrangement of this song, coupled with his vocal, is one of the most emotional songs I've ever heard. And if you think about The Impossible Dream and you think about the melody behind it, you could almost sing Unchained Melody to this. And that's kind of like a chord arrangement. That's kind of like in which you listen to it and you think, actually, if you sung, "Oh, my love, my darling, I've hungered for your touch," and you put The Impossible Dream background to it, you not be too far away from it. But there's something in the way this song builds, and it's the way in which Luther builds it, which is extraordinary.
to try when your arms are too weary to reach the unreachable star. This is not where to follow that star. Ooh, no matter how hopeless,
Here he is doing his Lutheranisms
no
again.
matter how far, to fight for the right, without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for that heavenly cause.
Here's the change in the arrangement.
And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest.
When you hear Luther sing that and you think that he's been gone 20 odd years, that's hard, isn't it? And you think that something ridiculous that took him, you know, it's there's so many things in life, aren't there? And we're always thankful for all the time that we get. And I'm sure that he wouldn't have thought that literally a decade later, after recording this, that he wouldn't be with us anymore. It's astonishing to think that. I found it, with this particular track, I was listening to the live version, and the live version's incredible as well, by the way. But I wanted to play the original studio version that he recorded, because I think when you have a live version, sometimes what happens with live is, whilst live is incredible, it might be 3/4 of the way into their set, and the voice at that point, there's so many things they've got to do. And I couldn't record I think I've got up and done karaoke maybe a few times and tried to do certain things and cocked it all up, let alone be a professional singer and be able to do create standard throughout the course of a set. And we all take it for granted when we go to gigs, don't we? And towards the end of a gig, a singer's voice might be struggling or might not make that high note. But there's a reason with The Impossible Dream, and with this particular song, that I wanted to focus on it. And that is because of what's about to come, which I'm just going to let it play through when it gets through to that. And I'll be really interested to hear what your reaction to it is.
And the world will be better for this. That one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage,
Just taking it to a different place.
the unreachable, the unreachable, the unreachable star.
So I was talking to a friend of mine who, again, I met him 30 odd years ago. And you get talking to people when you move into a neighbourhood. And we started to talk about our shared love of music. And he told me that he was a big Luther Vandross fan. Reg, thank you for all your conversations around Luther over the years. And he is way, way, way bigger Luther Vandross fan. And I think that he made me understand Luther even more than I understood him, and made me think about some of the tracks and some of the music that he'd written. And what was great with Reg was what he did was that he also looked up and researched some of Luther's hidden gems, of which there's quite a few of them. He introduced me to a track called Hot Butterfly, which is a great, great song. And if you've not heard that, go and check it out. Go and look it up, check it out. It's great, great Luther track. And I think I said to Reg at one point, I think to him, well, he just does lots of ballads. He does a lot of soft stuff. And he went, oh, no. He said, you ever listen to him? You ever listen to some of his other stuff? And he said some of his upbeat tracks are some of my favourites. So I've picked The Impossible Dream. I think that maybe when you stop and listen to this track sung by Luther and some of the words and the lyrics are in this song, that you hear it in maybe in a different way, maybe through Luther's own struggles as he's growing up, being a backing singer for David Bowie on the Young Americans album, and just finding his own way in the world and perhaps having the confidence to go out and start recording his own stuff. You know, we all have great memories of songs, and I will always associate Never Too Much with Reg, and that's great because you hear a song, you hear and you think of a friend and you think of what that means to that person and the joy that they get from that track, and then the joy that gives you as well. And that's the power of music. So thanks for listening, and go and have a listen to some other Luther tracks. Go and listen to If Only for One Night for a song that's perhaps, you know, just one of his beautiful love songs. Listen to The Impossible Dream again. And go and listen to tracks off Busybody, which are like really, really strong, upbeat songs that have got some great bass lines on them, you know. You'll be dancing around to those, I promise. And if you like this video, like, subscribe. I'll be back very soon with another video, and I'll see you soon.